Hello, and welcome to another episode of Retro Encounter. I'm Caitlin Argyros, your temporary host for this particular episode. Josh is not feeling well and was not able to join us, but he wanted the show to go on because the show must go on, as the saying goes. So we are here, we are soldiering on. I am joined again by Alana Hagues.
Hello.
And Robert Fenner.
Hello.
So we're all here. We've now finished. We've beaten Xenogears, and I guess a good topic to start on is just what are our overall thoughts of the game now that we've beaten it?
Wow. There's quite a lot to start with. I mean, I really kind of fallen in love with this game very quickly, and my mood didn't really change towards the end. It seemed to get better towards the end for me. The build-up was so good, I think, going into the second disc. So the end of the first disc, especially, was fantastic. But, I mean, I really like the ending as well. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. But, yeah, just overall, like, fantastic. And I want more. Really, yeah.
Just think, there was planning for more. This is only episode 5 of a 6-episode series.
Hubris unbridled.
Yeah, I had to I poured myself all over the Perfect Works guide. I just had to sort of know everything, but I just could do with more. Yeah.
And I mean, special for you because this is your first time playing the game, right?
Yeah, that's true. Not my first Xeno game, but my first of the Gears, and left with a really, really good feeling. So, yeah, excited to talk about it, especially with all the stuff that's happened, because the second half of the game is just pure drama, almost.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff. This is going to kind of be controversial, but I'm almost kind of glad that it's a condensed sort of more focused on the actual story instead of gameplay and dungeons and stuff, because there's so many crazy things that happen towards the end of the game that to have that all be gameplay would just be too much, I think.
I agree completely.
Yeah, there's a lot to process, and I think all the dungeons in Disc 2 kind of did my head in a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree.
Robert, what was your experience like?
The plot was even better than I remembered it being. I enjoyed playing through the story again, unequivocally, but the game's mechanics started to wear on me from about just before the second disc onwards. Xenogears is kind of a technical mess, and it's not helped by the fact that it tries to get you to contend with puzzles and platforming while dealing with a very high encounter rate at the same time. And I found myself being quite worn down.
Yeah. Agreed.
I started getting pissed off with the second anima dungeon.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That puzzle is so glitchy. I had to go in and out of the first room, where before you even go in, there's that little cave where you have to push the boulder.
Mm-hmm.
I had to redo that room 5 times just to get the stones to fall out. And I thought, I'm doing this right. And I think I watched about 4 YouTube videos for it and was like, this is one room in a dungeon I can't do. And I was just getting so frustrated.
I don't know how I guess I figured it out when I first played it, because I don't think I was using like game facts back then, but it's kind of hard to imagine how you can figure out that puzzle without looking at a guide or watching a video. Finding the invisible thread that you have to examine to get the first boulder to fall, and then knowing where to jump in the air to get the third. I mean, like, come on, really?
Yeah.
So I ran into problems with the whole boss fights interrupting your jump right at the worst possible moment. I think I fell in that first chamber like 5 times.
Yeah.
Oh
So
God, yeah.
I mean, it's the cardinal sin that this game commits, puzzles or battles, not both, and
mhm.
definitely never battles at that encounter rate.
Yeah.
It seems to
No.
really leap up from the Tower of Babel onwards.
And those griffin
Yeah.
enemies.
Oh, I hate them.
They're the worst enemies. They are super powered. I
Yeah.
had Ellie with me, and she lost like almost all of her health in one fight because they
Sheesh.
kept pounding on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is my favorite RPG of all time, and it's still
Oh,
pretty much my favorite RPG of all
Oh.
time. Um, every super epic cutscene that would happen, I'd be like, "Ah, yes, this is it. This is what I remembered, and this is why, despite all of its uh, eccentricities and the age of the game, it still does such a good job with the dramatic cutscenes."
hmm.
Yeah.
So now that we've played through the game, we know sort of, or we think we know everything about the story and the characters. What do we think about the characters and their hidden identities, or the truths behind them, especially characters like Citan and Faye and Ellie and Krellian?
Yeah, the villains. Like, Krellians. Actually, all of them. So, Krellian, they're all really sad. So, they have all the secrets that they have are all quite sad. So, I'm thinking of Ramsus mostly.
Hmm.
Um, Poor Ramsus, destined, who was destined to be the contact, but because Karen turned up, as Miang, and was like, "Oh, my son is the contact. Please take him." And Ramsus was basically just cast aside, and the poor guy's just got this kind of inferiority complex where he has to be better than Faye. And the minute that Faye beats him, he's just so driven by rage, and I feel really bad for him, and I feel really bad for all the villains because they're all just characters who've tried to make a difference or tried to do something and then failed. And because they failed, they feel like there's another extreme. So with Krellian, with the Shivat Solaris War, um, that's horrible as well because Krellian he seemed like such a nice guy, but I think it went downhill when he started reading the nanotechnology that Kim had written. I think it was Kim. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think
About
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and he just started becoming obsessed with all these ideas, and then when Sophia or Ellie, this incarnation of dies, he just completely loses it. All of them, like Lacan as well. Actually, Lacan Graf is probably one of my favorite characters in this game.
He's really interesting, isn't he? Once
He
you
is
realize who he is.
It's really complicated as well, which is good. Like, yeah, Graf is wise man and your dad and Lacan, and it's like, oh my god, gotta process it all.
My
There's
dad
so
is my arch nemesis, and he's also me from a previous life. And mind blown.
And he's
Yeah,
also my
pretty.
mentor.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
Ah.
kind of
yeah,
on my side.
yeah, yeah. Because Wiseman's everywhere. Like, it's where he just randomly turns up in Shivat. Like, you need to go and speak to the Queen, and then when you realize later on that it's Graf, you're like, that he was that close. But yeah, most of the hidden identities I don't see coming. I will, like, apart from Citan, because Citan was shady all the way through,
He knows way
and
too much for his own good.
I love him. I love him for being
I
shady.
think he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. He's definitely a jerk. I mean, he's so obviously leading you on. Like this, I think TV Tropes or somewhere like that has actually got how many times he uses an ellipsis, and it's definitely in like triple figures, I'm sure. It's like it's pretty shifty. I mean,
But his Omnigear, one
Fenrir.
of
Yeah.
the sexiest Omnigears. Although my favorite is Crescent's.
Crescent's is beautiful. Crescent's and El Regris, Sophia's and Ellie's, which you never get to use.
Yeah, it's so bad. Why?
I know.
You can fight it as it in the battle arena, but that's it. You can't ever use it in actual battle, which is stupid.
Yeah,
So pretty.
I know.
Yeah, Krellian is such an interesting villain. I think they did a really good job with him because your initial impression of him, once you know who he is and you keep learning what he's done to Ramses, manipulating the Gazel ministry, conspiring to kill Cain, he sounds like this complete jerk. But through Faye's flashbacks to his previous life, you see who he used to be and you learn why he became what he is. And it's not that it's forgivable necessarily, but it helps you understand him a lot more. And he's a more sympathetic villain than just, oh, well, I want to kill everything. I want to create God and blah, 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 blah. It becomes a bit more human to see where his motivations are coming from. And Ramses, I can't help it. I mean, it's annoying that he's, until you learn why he's so fixated on Faye, that he just never gives up and he keeps losing. But once you learn why, I feel bad for the guy, and Miang just skyrockets into mastermind. If there's any enemy who is very hard to be sympathetic for, it's Miang, I think.
She's proper evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. That particular incarnation as well. I mean, there's the slight slip with Karen when Faye's mother is Miang, where she just protects Faye from id, or the blast from his second personality or whatever. That's the only time where Miang is kind of presented as, well, not even Miang, it's just the lapse of her grip on her.
Yeah,
But,
isn't that Karen kind of trying to wrest control back from Miang? Or am I remembering wrong?
I think
no,
so.
I think it is, yeah. But yeah, the Miang that you deal with most of the time is, yeah, she's definitely the most evil character, if we say that. That sounds quite pantomime saying it like that, but she's definitely got the worst motives.
I find it hard to sympathize with Krellian. I think he's just kind of like an entitled, angry, nice guy. Yeah, I think he's a bit of a crybaby, and I have more sympathy for Ramses than I do for him. Maybe because Ramses doesn't go genocidal.
True. Yeah. I see where you're coming from, definitely.
What was I gonna say? One of the things, I don't think the game necessarily spells it out, but it's heavily implied if you go to, I guess you go to the lighthouse where you can make Emeralda grow up. You see the records and you see a picture of Miang standing by the Prime Minister of Zeboam, and it's heavily implied, I would think, through that she had her hands on the politics that were going on in Zeboam, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was directly responsible for the infighting that was happening that basically destroyed Zeboam.
Yeah, I think it is implied. I think I might have read it in Perfect Works. She's also twins, isn't she?
I think so, yeah.
Zeboam. Yeah, so
that's kind of crazy how that works out.
Amazing.
Yeah. They brushed that over that a little bit.
I mean, like we see in the very first cutscene of the game, when the Eldridge crashes, it seems like the only survivor is Miang on the beach. And so she seems like this Eve figure, but she's meant to be more of like a Lilith. Like, it seems like she's the only survivor. You can see she's got her fingers in pies all the way back then. So it's neat to go to all these places and see how Miang has been a mover and shaker for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was mostly responsible for Lacan losing his stuff. I can't say the S word. Losing
Losing his mind.
Yeah. Like I think she was the final straw that sort of sent him searching for for Zohar, for the way of existence.
Hmm.
At least the game seems to imply that based on the timing. Like she's the one who sort of like tells him, if only you had more power, Sophia would still be alive. And that becomes his driving force, is I need to have more power, and doth thou desire the power?
Oh, the Graph persona is kind of amicable with Miang, whereas the other sides of Kar, not so.
The other sides of Lacan, or
Aren't they kind of all the same? Isn't am I just remembering wrong?
it's weird. It's like Lacan's soul or his mind.
Lacan's kind of possessing him, right?
Yeah,
Kar?
yeah. A Khan.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about Ramses.
Sorry. Of course, Ramses Khan. Yeah, I meant Khan.
Your daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's actually it sounds very similar to Miang and her possession, but I suspect it's not quite this. I mean, it's not the exact same process. But it you see both times how it's possible for, I guess, the host body to temporarily wrest control and reassert itself, because that's every time that we see Wise Man, that's pretty much what's happening, is that's Khan taking over and helping. So
yeah,
she's just But it is pretty interesting once you get to the end of the game and you have a clearer picture of all these different timelines and the players. I remember thinking that the whole reincarnation thing with the contact and the antitype was a really cool story element. Gave it kind of that sort of epic feeling, like they're fated to always meet and fall in love, and the antitype is always fated to sacrifice herself to protect the contact. And this one cycle with Faye and Ellie is the one cycle where they manage to finally break it and survive. And I remember, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, that part of my interest in the game, weirdly enough, was because I was so heartbroken over Eris dying in Final Fantasy VII. I wanted a love story that had a happy ending, and I think that might actually be a factor in why I love the game so much after all these years, is because that was this was that love story. It was a happy ending, and it was really a beautiful, epic love story once you get all the pieces put together and you know the history of the characters.
Yeah,
it's very good. It's kind of a Pyrrhic victory of a happy ending, since there's not very many people left. But I mean, there's like a bittersweetness to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's quite, their relationship's quite sad and beautiful, but I think especially where it's kind of a play on the Freudian ideas of the Oedipus complex, because Ellie is supposed to be the original Ellie with Abel. I think I can never remember I think it was either the Zohar or whatever was in the Eldritch when Abel came into contact with it. They wanted him to create something in an image, and he chose the image of his mother. So Ellie is supposed to be what his mother looks like, apparently.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it's an interesting idea. I do really, Ellie and Faye I really, really like them as a couple, and like by this point I like both of them as characters as well, because they've developed quite a bit, and they've changed quite a lot, and
Hmm.
they're really. I felt really sad when Faye shouted at her and was like, "You can't come with us," and Ellie was just like, "Oh, well, okay," and just ran off. Like, I'm not doing a very good way of reacting it, but um, that scene, that scene made me cry. I was like, oh, I was like, really? Why? I don't know why it did. But they're really good.
Hmm.
Yeah, they are really good. So speaking of psychology, so we have literal psychology being thrown at the player through the discussion of, well, they only ever mention the term id. They don't talk about the ego and the superego, but those
But
are
it's
represented by the other personas within
Yeah.
Fae,
yeah.
and it's cool how they did that. I mean, for like the whole secret explanation behind Faye's power and who this redheaded guy with the super awesome looking, better than Weltall red gear is, um, was kind of an interesting, I think, development, especially when you learn that it's Miang possessing Karen, running all these horrible experiments that creates the disassociation in the first place.
Hmm.
Anyway, I think it's interesting.
It is interesting. Oh,
It's
let's try.
it's maybe a little bit too nicely resolved with the personalities merging into one, which presumably means it is just
Yeah.
gone. Um,
Well,
and
it's a very anime style approach to mental
yeah,
illness.
Definitely. Yeah.
do we have any particular thoughts about the religious themes in the game? Because that's another thing that people, when they think about Xenogears, they think, oh, all the religious symbolism and things like that.
I think a lot of it's there just to look cool and, to crib from Evangelion. A lot of it seems rather um, outside of being used for aesthetics and style, kind of meaningless. But I'm okay with that. I'm all right with a bit of religious symbolism, even if it's not in aid of anything but looking cool.
Yeah. I like my religious symbolism, but a lot of it is, like Robert says, it's kind of just there. It adds effect. Like like the first thing that comes to mind is the bit where Krillion's like, "I'm gonna crucify you," and then he just lines them up on crucifixes, and it's like, you
And
don't
Choo
need to
Choo!
do that. Yeah, always Choo Choo.
Yeah.
Like, why? She did nothing.
That
She died for your
scene
sins.
that scene is not as serious as it could be because Choo Choo, you see Choo Choo, and I couldn't help but smirk
Yeah,
Well, still,
because
even if Choo Choo wasn't there, he's crucifying robots.
yeah, I know. Very true. Very, very true. But I like the concept of Deus and the computer and of the Zohar. Like Deus is freaky. Like, it's just an organism, essentially computer organism thing. And when it comes out of the Eldritch, when you go in the first time, it's kind of disgusting. Like, it's half rotten, and I'm like, oh, that's yeah. It's quite a strange representation of, well, it's only a god substitute, I suppose. I think the closest thing to god is possibly the wave existence, but
Hmm.
Deus is quite a nice, like, kind of way to represent people's kind of corrupt use of god and godlike figures, I guess. That's how I
Yeah.
took Deus to be.
well, I thought it was interesting how much the game shows you representations of religion and the god myth and things like that. We have Balthazar very early on in the game, sort of giving you a god myth, which once you learn more about the world, that's less of a story about God and more of a story about what actually happened on the planet.
Hmm.
And you learn about the ethos, and they're a religious organization, but their religion is all fabricated and designed to control the people. And you learn Krellian talks about creating God and finding God, but then you learn that this God is actually just gigantic living weapon powered by a higher dimensional being. And it was interesting to sort of have all those religious symbols sort of broken down and shown for what they really are. And maybe I'm saying that because it kind of mirrors my own personal experience with religion and God and things like that. And we don't necessarily have to get into that can of worms, but I do think it's an interesting way to have religion be thrown in there, not just to have it be token religion, but to sort of twist it a little bit.
It worked on me.
Yeah, it did.
I don't think the game would be the same without it. I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much without that framing device.
They have the Nissan cross that's so prominently used throughout the game, and I kept trying to figure out, is it multiple crosses that people have, or did this one cross make the journey from Sophia to Lacan to Karen to Faye? I don't know. It's kind of
that was
weird.
My reading.
Yeah,
but I suppose it's ambiguous. So.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know whether I'm making it up. I don't know whether Margie ever had one, and obviously Faye has one. Because I seem to no, I think Faye gave his to Ellie, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'm getting that mixed up, but never mind. I think I read it very similarly to you two.
We already kind of talked about the art style in our last episode. Yeah. I remember, I don't know if I think this was partly the fact that I was playing the game on Vita and the digital version. It's not 100%, doesn't 100% run well. My anime cutscenes would always kind of skip a little bit every once in a while. But I don't think that was the reason. I remember way back when I first played the game, the cutscenes are pretty, but the lip sync was possibly the worst lip sync in a video game.
Yeah, I noticed that at the time.
Yeah, 90s lip syncing, definitely. Xenogears is definitely a victim of it.
Even compared to other samples of 90s lip syncing, it's like it's completely wrong in this game.
Like the voice stops, but the mouth is still moving, and you're kind of like, what? Okay, are they whispering?
Godzilla dub. Got Sandy Frank to do that one.
Yeah, makes it maybe a little bit hard to take what's happening in a cutscene seriously because you're just kind of laughing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't have a huge amount of the anime cutscenes. I think there's a good balance between the anime and the CGI cutscenes.
Yeah, they're good. They're evenly spread out, which is nice. There's a lot more anime in the beginning, and then as you get to the end of Disc 2, they throw a little bit more at you. So there's quite a nice period of rest where you get some CGI. CGI is pretty good, actually, for 98.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
yeah.
I was pretty happy not to have a whole lot of voice acting. 'Cause I think the voice acting in the anime cutscenes is pretty bad.
Oh God, yeah.
And that kind of thing would probably ruin the mood. I mean, the translation's a little bit spotty anyway, but in a game like this, I was happy to read text a lot of the time. Although I wish that speed was a little bit faster, or scenes were skippable. But I was happy with the presentation.
Yeah. I never suffered that problem until the Ouroboros fight, the second to last boss fight. Oh God, really? Like, yeah, good plot point. I watched it I think 4 times over, and then I had to fight Ramses, watch another 10-minute cutscene, and then die again, and then go through another 20 minutes, 25 minutes of pain.
Miang, yeah.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah.
That was the only time I really suffered from it, but yeah, when you have to rewatch cutscenes, imagine if you hadn't saved it after one of the hour-long cutscenes on disc 2.
Uh,
And yeah, I can
yeah.
imagine why some people would definitely feel like that. But for the
Well, you
most
can't
part,
even wander away. You just have to keep sitting there pressing X for another hour.
yeah,
I think that's if there's one lesson that we would wish that game developers would learn, but they don't always learn, but they're getting a little bit better at it, is please have skippable cutscenes.
Mm.
Please.
yeah. Hmm.
Especially if the first half of your game's name is Xeno. Every Xeno game should have skippable
Yeah.
cutscenes.
Well, they do now.
Thankfully,
Do they? Yeah.
yes, I think Takahashi finally learned his lesson.
Does Xenosaga not have skippable cutscenes then?
I don't think it does.
At
Oh my
least
God.
episode 1 did not,
Oh
which
dear.
I think contributed to everyone's, or well, some people's ire about the game being essentially a movie.
Yes. Blimey.
Well, since we were talking about hard bosses, what are our thoughts about sort of the final boss rush? And I think we can include Ramses and Miang, since that's pretty much right before the end of the game anyway. What did we think about, the final bosses? What was your strategy when it came to Deus? Did you take down his pillars first, or did you just rush him?
Rushed him.
I took down the pillars, which was no picnic, but that sort of turns him into a cakewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually kind of a cakewalk, even if you don't.
Oh, okay.
If you're equipped properly.
Yes. I stuck some speed shoes on Faye and just kind of let him get to infinity mode, and yeah, that's kind of that. I mean, the only thing you really have to do is well, I took Emeralda in and Citan, but Emeralda's health is quite low, so it was just more a case of keeping her alive more than anything. But I weighed up doing the pillars, but I thought I panicked. I was like, because I've got to distribute my party evenly. There's 8 people, and then you can take 3 into the final boss, but it's like you're going to have to use 2 people twice, or at least 1 person twice, or not, depending on how you do it. But I thought I'd try it and then maybe just suffer, if not, and do all 4.
My usual strategy is to take down the 4 pillars, but this time I wasn't prepared enough. I hadn't upgraded everyone's gears well enough, so I took down 1, and then I came up against the one that heals itself, and I could not do enough damage to offset its healing. So I'm like, forget this. Rushed Deus, got my butt whooped when he did his ultimate. What is it? Ultimate destruction or whatever. His ultimate attack. His 5-minute animation.
The moon one.
Yeah.
The one with the moon.
The Sephiroth attack is what it is.
Oh yeah.
And then
the Bahamut Zero.
Yeah, that it's like, okay, I'm gonna go like get a drink or something while this animation plays. But then I just re-equip people and faced him again. I wasn't doing enough damage, that's why he was able to get it off. But I mean, yeah, Xenogears is ridiculously overpowered with its 99% chance of entering I mean, it's a guaranteed pretty much chance. You get him up to attack level 3, and then you're pretty much, he's always going to enter hyper mode. And if you had access to Kishin, it's overpowered. So, and if you put a holy pendant on Faye, so he gets double the effect, you get 6 turns of infinity mode, and yeah.
I didn't do that. Damn.
That's why you keep that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I still had it. I just didn't think about that at all.
Yeah.
But I still managed. It was fine.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that either.
Yeah, he's still, I mean, I died the first time because I wasn't prepared, but once I re-equipped, Emeralda was basically doing nothing but casting ether with an ether doubler and power magic, so she was doing a lot of damage. Poor Citan, having a really awesome gear, he was actually the least productive member in that final fight. Sorry, dude, but Emeralda is the best character overall if you build her up enough. So sorry.
Well, he's probably the best on foot.
Oh, definitely.
He is, although if you grind Emeralda, she can surpass him. Because she'll get when she's an adult, she gets guaranteed stat upgrades on every stat every time she levels up. Except for agility. You don't get agility. Although that would be amazing if she did.
I just wish they did more with her character. It feels like there was only half of her story there.
Yeah. I wish that you could make her grow up a lot earlier in the story.
Yeah.
She has I think she has the best looking sprite in the game.
She does. And I wish it wasn't optional. Like, you don't have to do it. And it's like, why wouldn't you? Because it's really I wish they'd built on Zeboim a little bit more, because even if you hadn't done that, not only would you not know a lot about Emeralda, but you wouldn't know much about Kim. So it's quite an important part.
Yeah.
But I can see, like, because of budget restraints, I can see why it happened.
Yeah.
I kind of like that it's hidden in the margins as side content, but I do wish there was more there than ended up being there.
It was a neat little sort of montage that they gave us into Kim, not Faye, Kim and Ellie's past there, and learning more about Zeboim culture and the creation of Emeralda. It's really, I mean, when I think about their past lives, it's probably one of the saddest, I think, of their past reincarnations, just because Zeboim is a really interesting chapter in that planet's history, and I don't know if it was intentional. I kind of think it was, that it's the only civilization in the game that is sort of equivalent to current technology and current city structure. I mean, it basically looks like a modern city.
It looks really cool.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Those ruined buildings, like the ruined skyscrapers. It's fantastic.
But it looks like, this could potentially be Tokyo or something like that, but it was destroyed by nuclear weapons. And I always wonder whether or not that was sort of an intentional reference to sort of, to reference Japan's own history with nuclear weapons.
I'd say you're probably dead on there.
I think so.
Japan was also going, around the time of Xenogears being in development, Japan was going through a renaissance of apocalyptic Japan media in the face of the Great Kobe earthquake and the sarin gas attacks, which really, there was a big resurgence of Japan being destroyed in popular culture after those two events in particular. So you're probably right on the money about what Takahashi was intending with Zeboim.
So shifting gears a little bit, we already sort of in general discussed Disc 2 and the sort of the shift, but I think it might be interesting if if there was one part on Disc 2 in its sort of truncated form that could be made into full gameplay, a dungeon or a story sequence, is there any particular moment that you think you'd like to see in greater detail?
I mean, I think a touch, I'd quite like to have used Regress, I think, is the main thing. So the bit where, I can't remember where it was, where they got crucified, but that bit would have been good to play as Ellie's Omnigear. But also, I would quite like to have gone to the to release the limiter myself on the to disperse the nanomachines to remove everyone's limiters. So just after, when Faye is fighting Ramses for the first time on Disc 2, Ellie and Emeralda go off. I would have quite liked to have done that. and
Hmm.
seeing what happened there, because it's kind of just a brush off like, oh, everyone's got limiters, we're just gonna take them off, and oh, I'd quite like to know how that happens and why and what happens, because again, it would have helped with Emeralda. It would
Yeah.
have given her some more screen time.
She
Um,
really needed some character interaction with Ellie. She
yeah,
I always was confused by the fact that she immediately recognizes Faye as Kim, but she doesn't seem to recognize Ellie as her mother, despite the
yeah,
fact that they both look. I mean, they're both wearing different clothes than in Zeboam, but I always found that weird, and it would have been kind of nice if that dungeon they could have had a few character moments and would have bonded a little bit as pseudo mother and daughter.
Hmm.
yeah,
And I mean, yeah, I think it would have been cool to play as regulars. I think they were planning to have basically everyone have an Omni gear, and that was one of the things that got cut. You see, in Perfect Works, there were plans for
yes.
an L Crescens and an L Siebsen, and that never happened. Um,
Oh, yeah,
and that would have been cool to have everyone get an Omni gear. Um, some of the more dramatic sequences, like the part where Ramses attacks Nissan, would have probably had a little bit more effect if they could have been actually animated. Um, but on the other hand, I find sometimes that the monologuing actually helped the pace a little bit. The game is already super
yeah.
long. I think I was close to 60 hours at the end of disc one.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
Blimey.
to have all of those dungeons, and there are big chunks of the game where the story is we went around the world destroying all the Soylent systems, or we searched around the world for information about the Zohar or whatever, or Bart magically found these ancient records that explain that
Oh,
the
that.
that was okay. Yeah. Let's talk about the
I found them
fight.
on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, when you think about it, it would have been a little bit hard to explain that and have that all happen without it being a massive increase in playtime and gameplay
Yeah.
and whatnot. I mean, like, how many Soylent systems are there? Would we have to go to like 4 or 5 of them to destroy them? And what would be the process of finding these mystical records? And let's just talk about the stupidity of the Yggdrasil 4 and the magical transforming. First it's like a tail on the back of the gear, and then the Yggdrasil becomes the Mega Gear's gun, and I mean, like, I can't imagine that's safe for anybody that's actually in the Yggdrasil at the time.
definitely not.
Cause yeah, I mean, that I think, and the elements magical gear transformation that was clearly
Power Rangers.
a Power Rangers reference had to be.
Hmm.
Or what was the other mech?
That was
Voltron.
a Voltron, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were very amusing moments.
I think I just thought of it actually. I think I'd have liked to have seen a bit more of what happened to Hammer between
Yes.
Solaris and the Anima Relic Dungeon, the second one.
Yeah,
Like,
because he just jumps on you.
Yeah.
yeah, he's just like gone from sneaky little, I love Hammer, sneaky little person to like, oh, I'm gonna shoot you all because power, and like, Graf, do you have to interfere? And other whoever else, and but I would have liked to have seen how and why and what, but oh, Hammer.
Yeah, the hammer thing wasn't quite. That felt like it came out of left field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had trouble feeling sad. I felt sad for him, but I had trouble really investing in his death because it just came so out of the blue.
Well,
I felt annoyed. I was like, "What are you doing?"
yeah.
Yeah, like, why?
Like he kind of the story forgets about him once the Goliath is shot down. I mean, he's on the Yggdrasil. You can talk to him, but
Yeah.
he doesn't show up in any cutscenes. Rico also really gets ignored after you leave Kislev. It's kind of unfortunate that they had a few characters that just they couldn't do a lot with, and they
Like
had some really really interesting stories to tell.
Yeah.
Jesse all but disappears after you're done in Shivat,
Yeah,
and he makes quite an entrance when his him and Billy's arc begins. So just seeing him just kind of disappear without any fanfare, I found pretty disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, he just appears in Solaris. That's the last time you see him, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
When
yeah.
Citan goes back with his sword and then starts using
Hmm.
it, and Jesse's there, and I think Jesse would have been more interesting if we'd carried on seeing him, but again, they do that a lot. And Maria's another character they just sort of sideline as well for
Yeah.
a bit. Like she's just like she pops up in Shivat. She's useful to get you to Solaris. That's about it.
Well, she is. Well, actually, no. I take that back. Choo Choo is also equally useless, but
Well, Choo Choo's the joke character now.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I was happy to see the back of Maria because she's just having to use her in this Shivat dungeon. Was
oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that was just a nightmare.
That was stupid. And her sprite animations just also kind of like, what are you doing?
She does like this Three Stooges style wind up punch.
Yeah.
she's so slow as well. Oh. But Seebson is pretty good.
Yeah,
Mm.
Seebson can win you single-handedly battles shortly after you get it because it has such a good engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that had to have been also another thing that they had to sacrifice with the budget. They couldn't really integrate all of the characters the way they wanted to.
Mm.
I mean, I'm glad for what we could see from them. I do think it's interesting that they all seem to have a tragic element to their backstories. Seitan, I don't really. There's not really a whole lot that's tragic about his story, so he's the odd liar out. But
But he's got his hidden depths in being like a bit of a puppet master.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he does eventually make the right choice in giving the finger to Solaris and
Mm.
joining your team full time. I know he gets much more powerful with the sword. I hate his sword sprite on foot. I hate it.
Yeah.
It looks like his face looks so dark and
It's weird. I know.
Eh.
Yeah. Actually, it would have been good to see more of Yui and his daughter.
Midori.
But yes, Midori. Because she's psychic or she can speak. She doesn't need to vocally speak, say. She's telekinetic, that's what I'm thinking of. And they just literally, again, drop it out of the blue, maybe once or twice. Yui just completely disappears in Disc 2. She appears in Solaris, and you would just go up to her, and she's like, "Oh, hi, Faye," and it's like, "Hang on a minute."
How about some cookies?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, I left you in the hut with the rest of Laham, the people. It's like, yeah, and then she just disappears after giving him Citan his sword, and it's like, oh, I'd like to see that a little bit more. There's got to be something there. Again, Perfect Words touches on it a little bit more. Apparently, she's a pretty badass swordswoman, so
Yes.
yeah, I'd like to have seen that.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. They show us so many other backstories of the characters, but they don't really ever show Seitan's backstory. They tell us about it a little bit, but they don't give us any flashbacks. And that would have been really cool to see that transition in him, even though he still ends up being a spy for the Emperor. And the Emperor is, I don't know how I feel about him. He on the one hand he's not the true ruler, but he's the sort of the British Queen, I guess, of Solaris.
Figurehead.
The figurehead, but he's still involved and can control the ministry. And on the one hand, if he's aware of what Krellian is doing, or if he's aware of what Solaris does in general, and he lets it go, it's kind of like, ugh, unforgivable. But on the other hand, he does seem to sympathize with humans and tries to prevent the Gazel Ministry from unlocking the key. And it's an interesting, I think, feel for this character who should be, he's the leader or one of the leaders of the main antagonist. You should, not like him, but he usually feels a bit more like he's not all that bad. And it's like when Ramses is manipulating to killing him, I'm like, oh, now why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a funny one. Showing up all early, having ominous conversations with his skull face, and then, betraying the Gazelle Ministry, who definitely don't have humanity's best interests at heart, and showing that, well, he's not that bad a guy after all, despite his evil, evil face.
Creepy face.
Yeah.
Like they say he's had life extension treatments, but I'm like, there's like no skin. It looks like it's bone.
Well,
Is it a mask?
you see a face when Ramses kills him. He smashes the skull mask, and there's a very withered old man underneath.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy though when you think this is the Cain from like almost 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Zephyr's looking pretty good for being 500 years old, but I mean, oh wow, Cain.
Kay needs to get him some of that cocoa butter.
I think he needs to draw a bath in it. He needs to bathe in it. So we kind of saved talking about music, I think, for this episode because I want to sort of have the full experience. What did we all think about the music in Xenogears?
Infiltration is one of my favorite songs in a game ever.
I love that. Yeah.
It's so jazzy.
It's so funky.
So jazzy and seedy, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
But that is the whole soundtrack is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I tried to listen to it a while ago, maybe a couple of years ago. I think I struggled to enjoy it because I didn't understand the game. So when I played through Xenogears, I found myself very quickly really like understanding all the music feels really important and really relevant. So I think Bonds of Sea and Flame are probably my favorite track, and then possibly there's some really bizarre tracks as well. I was just thinking about the Solaris theme, like you
yes.
think Evil Empire, and it's just like I'm in a circus, really. But yeah, Bonds of Sea and Flame, and I like Shivat's theme as well. They're very Mitsuda, but also there's good variation as well. I think I would probably say it is Mitsuda's best work, maybe. I mean, like Mitsuda does a lot of good work, so I'm a little biased, maybe.
Probably my favorite of his.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to highly recommend the arranged soundtrack, Creed.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yes.
That is
so
a fantastic
good.
disc.
Yes.
I know there are some versions, some renditions of tracks on Creed that I actually like more than the original. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but the arrangement of, I guess, the organ theme that you see the Kaiser playing and Kislev, and the the music that plays when you're in the cathedral in Nissan. The version of that on Creed is really beautiful.
So good.
I love the sort of the chunk of it where the beat comes in and it's got a little bit of a Celtic vibe to it. It's so I mean the entire album has a Celtic vibe to it. But
yeah, Mitsuda likes Celtic vibes. It's quite an interesting choice for Xenogears. It's quite nice. I mean, the Stars of Tears, I think that's really a shame that they didn't use it because it's a really good song. I might have got them the wrong way around. Like the one that's on the soundtrack, but
No,
they
yeah,
didn't include
that's
it. Yeah,
yeah.
because it would make the beginning like 20 minutes. But it's only like a 3-minute song. I'm like, the opening's only like 5 minutes or something like that. But it's a nice, interesting choice for a RPG that's mech and kind of religion based, and I like it. But I think there's a quirk of Mitsuda that I like Celtic and bells. I tend to think.
Yeah, when I think of Mitsuda, I think Celtic, or I think he's usually at his best when he's doing something Celtic themed. Um, but yeah, I always struggle with the soundtrack. I love it so much, but there are times when I feel like I kind of got to give it to Chrono Cross a little bit, even though
Oh,
Chrono Cross isn't as good of a game as Xenogears, I don't think. But there's sometimes when I think that he did a better job with the score there. But then I can't really fight the nostalgia and just the love that I have for so many of the themes in Xenogears, including the ending theme song that plays during the credits, "Small Two of Pieces." It's just
yeah.
that was like the first time I think I had remembered playing a game where there was a song playing during the credits, like you would normally maybe have in a movie or something. And I remember thinking, wow, games really are kind of approaching that movie experience, because now we have songs in our ending credits. Um, but it's
It's
still
a
like,
whole year before Fei Wong wowed us with Eyes on Me.
yeah, but it's still my favorite, I think, ending, or just any song in a video game. I don't think that he tried to sort of emulate that sound for the music for the songs in Xenosaga Episode 1. Didn't quite have that same feel to it. I don't know if it was just that the composition wasn't there, or if my emotional attachment wasn't there. I mean, having that ending play at the end of the game after Faye rescues Ellie and returns to everyone was a really an emotional high. So that might be a factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
But there's so many good themes, and I agree. Bonds of Sea and Fire is really high up there, if not like my favorite like in-game piece. I love every time it plays. I really missed it in disc 2. It didn't play very much there because there wasn't a whole
Yeah.
lot to do with Bart. But such a beautiful theme, and Emeralda's character theme is hauntingly beautiful and
Yeah.
a great representation of both her as a character and Zibom and their sad fate. And another track on Create that is very excellent is the arrangement of June Mermaid.
Yeah, it's real good.
My favorite, yeah.
I gotta say, I really like how the game used a lot of absence of music. I found it to be very immersive when you were trekking through long dungeons that just had, the sound of water dripping or some wildlife. Not many games at the time did that, especially not many Japanese RPGs. So that it gave a very different feel, a very sort of isolated and lonely and quite creepy feel to a lot of the game's adventuring.
Does. Yeah. I think the final dungeon's split between that when you're in the pipes is the only word I can think of, and then when you're out on the stupid spinning puzzle.
Ay.
I mean, yeah. Omen plays. Omen is probably one of my favorites as well. But I do really like like you say, the sewers is the first thing that comes to mind with the no music. You just have the dripping, and it's really good. It's like there's not many RPGs then that did it. There's not many that do it now, really. I don't think.
Yeah, not really.
No.
Especially JRPGs.
Yeah.
I guess just
OTT.
like the Souls games.
Yeah.
But that's a very
Atmosphere.
different thing.
No, it's still for atmosphere though, and it works very well in the Souls games.
Yeah, you wouldn't really see a Final Fantasy game giving you an area with no music. I mean, not Not usually. I think there are maybe a few points in like 7 or 8 where there's no music, but I mean like every area, every dungeon has music.
Yeah.
They tried to repeat this in some of the Xenosaga titles, and it didn't work, in my opinion, because if I'm remembering correctly, they didn't have the ambient sound that worked so well in Xenogears. It was just flat out silence in some dungeons in Xenosaga 2, and I think maybe 3 as well.
I don't remember those games well
Oh.
enough.
Yeah, I remember it similarly used silence, but they didn't do it in the same way. And so it just seemed odd, other than oppressive.
What did we think though about like I think the one weak thing about Xenogears is its main battle theme. Sorry, Mitsuda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't even really like the boss music that much, but
No.
Yeah, it doesn't play frequently enough to kind of associate it as boss music. I think I like what I associate as the main gear battle theme. I know you tend to get the normal battle theme, but I tend to think of Steel Giant as
Yeah.
that I really like that. The main battle theme, it's very short and just kind of loops. And when you've got such a high encounter rate as well, it's just kind of like this one again. But Crimson Knight, I like.
Yeah.
That's like the worst way to start a battle. That's up there with the beginning of Ni no Kuni's battle music of like a bit of an annoying jingle to me, anyway.
Oh,
I know that might be a controversial opinion, but
oh no, I see where you're coming from.
At least the final. Well, actually, no. Both final boss music. I was gonna ask what we thought about the actual, real final boss music, but Awakening, the semi-final boss music is good. I mean, compared to the normal battle and normal boss battle, I think it's actually a really good track.
yeah.
Fantastic, both of them.
And then the theme that plays when you're fighting the actual final boss, one who bears fangs at God, is I'm thinking that's such an interesting choice for both a final boss and for final boss music. It's subdued. I mean, Aurobulus is not by any means a hard fight at all. She's very much by that point a pushover. I went into Infinity mode and killed her before I finished Infinity mode. So
Yeah.
compared to Deus, who can be a little tricky if you don't kill all of his pillars. But the music there is just it's really different from a lot of the rest of the game's music, and it kind of ties in with the choral piece that plays during the last cutscene.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that was a really interesting choice to have.
It's very similar to, I've just remembered another Mitsuda soundtrack that I really like. I know it's a collaboration one. The first Shadow Hearts game. It's very similar to that.
Right on, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's really good. That's got the final boss theme for Shadow Hearts is great. Like, yeah. Very similar in that sense with the vocals and the bells and the kind of repetitive, not ticking, but there's a very steady rhythm to it, and I really like the final boss theme to this game.
Let's
That's a
say
good comparison.
It ends on a very high note, I think, which I think is a good apt description of the game itself. That it stumbles here or there. There are some quibbles, but ultimately it starts good. It starts strong and it ends strong, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I would.
Well, I think we're kind of naturally wrapping up. Robert, you and I, we've already played it. How was the experience overall, and the ending, getting through the end of the game? How was that, compared to earlier playthroughs or your first playthrough or whatnot?
It was just as powerful for me. I don't know if it's just the nostalgia value speaking, but there's plenty of older RPGs that I held in high esteem that I've returned to and haven't had quite the same effect on me. But there's obviously something about Xenogears that still does it for me today, and that I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to play it again and discuss it with both of you. And I'm a little bit melancholy that we won't see anything like it again. I mean, I'd love to see Takahashi do a similar kind of story. That's not to say that I don't love what he's doing now, because I really do. But Xenogears is just such a weird outlier. It was weird then, and it's weird now, and it's very special.
Yeah, that's basically my thoughts as well. Um, I think in some respects, maybe I had a little bit less patience for a few elements of the game because of either time or because I've matured as a gamer. I remember I don't like Faye for a good chunk of the first disc. I don't remember being annoyed with him when I first played the game, but
Yeah, I had less patience for him now than I did then.
yeah. But overall, there were so many moments of I remember this scene. This is a good scene, and it ends up being just as good as I remember it. And even though I'm familiar with the story, actually getting to play through it again and get all the story beats and little minor things that I had forgotten about over the years, and having those come back at me, and it was a really powerful experience. And getting the big picture of the game at the end and the resolution of that big picture was still, I think, just as powerful an experience as it was the first time I played. And that's probably why this game has stuck with me all these years, despite how it has aged or not really aged that well over time. Why this is still probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, JRPG, despite being a PS1 title, and in the face of beautiful Final Fantasy 15, Persona 5, PS4 games. So, I mean, I can't say enough
Two
good
games that
things.
aren't out yet.
I know, right? But they look pretty. We know they look gorgeous, so Xenogears can't compete in that respect. But in a lot of ways, I think I still have yet to find an RPG that matches Xenogears in terms of the depth of its story, the number of layers that are present, and the work that it must have taken to develop all of those characters and all of all the plot threads and all of the connections, and the idea of the story taking place over such a long period of time with multiple generations. It's probably a reason why I liked Xenoblade so much, because that was one of the first games in recent memory that I felt did a good job of creating a deep story that sort of blossomed as you progressed through and you learned all of these secrets and the hidden truths behind the world. I'm rambling, but yes, I love Xenogears. Playing it again has only really just reinforced my love of Xenogears, and I will play it again. I know, especially now that I have it in a portable format on my Vita, it's going to be kind of hard not to play it again.
I tell you one thing though, I'm glad that I got to play this again start to finish, but if we weren't playing this for a podcast, I probably would have given up at the Tower of Babel, because what is that? What are you doing? Yeah. That was just horrible. That's like the game giving you a big middle finger.
And Alana, we've already gone over it. This is your first time playing, but I mean, like, any final thoughts about the game from a first time player's perspective?
I think coming to it now, there's a lot of things that I notice, and that now you don't get, like you both have addressed, I'd say, like, the story is the main reason I would ever come back to this. I think I can quite safely say that Xenogears may well be one of my favorite games, probably one of the best I've played definitely one of the best I've ever played, because I just think the story is so good, and something I miss from a lot of newer RPGs. Like, I don't really have a game consider a favorite from the last 5 years, because they don't really dive deep enough into the story, or there's something I don't like, or there's some quirk that I don't like about them. But Xenogears is like it is a bit of a mess. Like technically, it's like dungeons that are platforming. It's glitchy. The graphics are slightly muddy and everything. But I can sense there's a lot of work and effort and heart gone into it, and I was emotionally gripped from the beginning. So it wasn't difficult to get through for me, just because I needed to. It wasn't a want, kind of, it was a need to know what happened. So I very, very, very quickly, as I have said numerous times, and I think maybe the entire internet might be a little bit fed up, I've kind of fallen in love with Xenogears, like head first, and I'm going to leave it a couple of years, and if I go back to it in a couple of years and have the same reaction that both of you have had with it, then I think I would be satisfied with it. I mean, I don't think I'll remember absolutely everything, so I think re-experiencing it will not remind me, but will definitely solidify that it will be one of my favorites. But for now, definitely one of the best games I've experienced. The best game I've experienced for a long time. Probably one of my favorite games I've ever played, and that's quite strange to say quite quickly after I finished it, but it's just clicked, and that just happens sometimes.
That's so lovely to hear.
Yeah, you can say that as many times as you want. I will fight anybody who's like, come on, no. I was so happy while you were playing the game, seeing you tweet about it to get that first time perspective. I'm like, and as a huge Xeno fan, I welcome you to the cult of Xeno. Very much. You're very welcome. We have jackets somewhere. I have to dig them up, but yes.
Okay. Good.
So welcome, and anyone who may have been listening or might be listening who's never played the game and maybe was convinced by all of our praise to play it. Enjoy. Longtime fans who know exactly what we're talking about when we say this game is awesome despite its quirks. Maybe you've been playing it again as well and have fallen in love with it all over again. But I think for us here at Retro Encounter, we've kind of reached the end of our discussion of Xenogears. Of course, the discussion is always continuing with a game like this. So many layers, so many things to say. But I think if we keep talking, this show will go on for another 10,000 years and multiple reincarnations of show hosts and guests. And I mean, who really wants that, really? So we're going to call it...
Dost thou want the podcast?
I mean, Caitlin's probably just Josh is probably like possessing Caitlin, so
yes,
we don't know.
Well, maybe, I don't know,
or the other way around, maybe.
Josh is still in his house in Lahan.
Oh, that's true.
That's probably yes. So maybe he'll be playing the game as he listens to this podcast. Maybe, or probably he'll be playing our next game. Retro Encounter is going to be checking out, which is going to be South Park: Stick of Truth. That will be the game that we're playing in July that you'll hear about in August, if I'm not mistaken. Yes,
I believe so.
I believe that's the way, because
That is correct.
We're talking about, we played Xenogears in June, but you'll be listening to it in July. So the next game for Retro Encounter, whenever we play it, is South Park: Stick of Truth. As always, feel free to shoot us emails at retro@rpgfan.com. Comments, suggestions, if you just want to gab and freak out about Xenogears, please, by all means, send those emails to Josh. He'll read them, and, yes.
His direct email address.
Yes. You can also, of course, comment on the boards. We have a thread that's for Retro Encounter. Any thoughts? If you want to share your own experiences with the games that we're playing, we'd love to hear that. That's kind of the whole spirit of the show. And as always, please rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast to help our show reach more people, because who doesn't want to talk about old, not always retro, but still classic RPGs? I think everyone wants to talk about good classic RPGs. And
Agreed.
that, I think, will do it for this episode of Retro Encounter. So for me, for Alana, and for Robert, thank you so much for tuning in, and please check back for our next episode. Bye!
Ta-ta.
Bye.